BrightHR, and she'll talk to us in just a moment. She'll be available for us. She's ready, I'm delighted to say. Gemma, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening to you. So now we're seeing the Employment Rights Bill set to get the Royal Assent tomorrow. My concern is, and I know lots of small business people here, it will be a great disincentive to take not just people on in a mobile jobs market where unemployment is growing, but also young people who need to be paid the minimum wage, because from the moment they sign the contract, from day one when they're working, I don't know, in the cafe or the office or the shop, they will have rights that small business people cannot afford.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we speak to a lot of business owners, particularly small businesses, on a daily basis on the advice line. And I suppose for those small businesses in particular, it really is a joined up issue. You know, they'll have the earlier unfair dismissal rights with increased legal exposure, changes in relation to statutory sick pay, entitlements to statutory parental leave. And that's increased cause before the business has had the chance to essentially absorb the new hire and induct them into the business. I think it's not the time to panic at the moment. At least we have some clarity now, and we have the roadmap that hopefully we can follow along with. What business owners really need to do now is get informed about the changes and start preparing and thinking about the next year, 18 months ahead.
Paternity leave for a guy who is waiting in a cafe, right? Or a car mechanic who wants to learn his apprenticeship in like a garage, like a rough and ready garage. It includes them too.
All it includes everybody.
Right.
And these changes are going to impact all business owners. There is no exception.
Right.
So everybody needs to prepare. But as I said, the key thing is try not to panic, get informed, seek advice, and try and get ahead of the game.
Gemma, is there a way around this? So, for example, if you run a cafe and with the best will in the world, you know, you've got, I don't know, 15 tables, and you might, you know, you'll need a chef or maybe two in the kitchen. You'll need the manager there to keep a hand on the till, just in case, and maybe one or two waiting staff. Is there a way around this to outsource the business so that you hire an interim company who then looks after all of the contracts? So you phone them up in the morning and say, yeah, I want one cook, I want one waiter, and you deal with it, and I pay you a monthly fee for that service. Is that a way around it?
I don't think that would be the preferential outcome for them, because I think that the people supplying those services will inevitably have to increase their costs as well. Be fed back to the business owner that's engaged in that.
Yeah, I know, except that it would take away all the grief of changing, kind of suddenly you're having a row with someone who you took on yesterday, and they're, you know, they drop all the plates on the floor and they start insulting the customers, and then they've got workers' rights. You know, at least that bit would be removed.
Yeah, like there would still be certain obligations, even if, you know, you have agency workers or temporary staff. There is certain obligations on employers in that regard. And one of the upcoming changes is all around kind of sexual harassment and in the workplace, and employers being obliged to take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment and, you know, from third parties. So there's other risks involved with that as well. It's a bit of a minefield, I think, for business owners. But it's taking it one step at a time, looking at the government roadmap, looking at what's coming in, looking at what you have in place at the moment, essentially doing a workplace assessment. So, you know, what have you got in your policies currently, you know, when it comes to probation periods, for example. I think one positive is that we don't have the day one right to unfair dismissal. I think that's a win for business owners, that it's 6 months, albeit it's a significant change from 2 years. But there's lots that business owners need to do, and ideally get that support where they can, and that you're going to have to train your managers on how to have these discussions and have that awareness piece as well. There's an awful lot to be thinking about now this time of year, particularly.
I'm using the cafe and the smallest kind of business, which is the most intense in terms of service. You're going to have an office. So like, you know, in a cafe, you've got the front office and then you've got the kitchen at the back and maybe you've got a couple of toilets. You know, where do you have these meetings with people? I mean, after it closes at the table at the back.
It's
like,
hard.
it's just not fit small business. It doesn't fit a garage.
Yeah.
You know, this is kind of, there should be some businesses, maybe perhaps if you've got a business of, I don't know, 6 or less employees, where this should be exempt, where the market for jobs should be mobile as possible. It didn't work out. You're not a very good waiter, but I reckon you might be very good working at the car garage across the road. You know, why can't we have a mobility of employment in the most basic of blue-collar jobs? Can't we?
Unfortunately, with the changes coming in at the moment, it is for all businesses. And, you know, I do agree with you, when you have got a small business owner that has maybe the 6 employees, they're trying to do everything. They're manage the staff on a day-to-day basis, you know, balance the books, order stock, maybe working in the business themselves. And, you know, we would have a lot of business owners call into us in the evening when they're at home, and, you know, they're starting essentially the second aspect of their job because they don't have that time during the day or the space in the workplace. So, you know, there's an awful lot. And whilst, you know, it is going to impact, the changes are going to impact everyone, I do believe that small business owners may feel the pressure that little bit more.
Of course they will. And of course, instead of your, you know, your full English breakfast being, you know, $8.99, it'll be $11.99 from next week.
Potentially.
Basically, that's what's going to happen.
Like, there's obviously a lot of rising costs involved, in terms of the entitlements that employees will have. But then, you know, the training aspect from a management perspective, I think recruitment is going to be key. You know, you're really going to want to nail down your recruitment processes and make sure that you're hiring the right employees. And
the due diligence.
It's a short window, 6 months, you know, it's gone
That's
in the blink of an eye. So,
can we talk about sexual harassment? You mentioned that earlier. Obviously, there are new regulations surrounding that. Now, a lot of people meet their other half, you know, across the office.
Yeah.
And sometimes those relationships break down, and sometimes they get a bit leery and animosity breaks out, and suddenly you've got harassment cases against a man where perhaps the man might have been victimized. Maybe it was just a man versus woman thing. It didn't work out. We move on. Isn't the sexual harassment laws that are coming in also a danger for people who are just sort of living their lives at work and meet their potential partner? Like, you're going to be disincentivized from having a nice chat with each other, you know, about things, going for a drink after work. You know, it's sad, isn't it? I mean, people do meet. It's human life, isn't it?
Absolutely, you do. And, you know, it happens quite often, as you said, and that's when it gets really tricky. And potentially, as you said, if the relationship breaks down or it turns sour, you potentially have colleagues gossiping, rumour mills are flying, people are getting upset in that regard. It puts the employer in a really awkward position. And I suppose going back to what you're saying, those small business owners that maybe have 5, 6 employees working in a small, close environment. So from the employer's perspective, I'm a firm believer when it comes to policies, procedures, that first step is making sure you have them in place, but it's not enough to just have a policy in place and say that's a box ticked. You need to ensure the employees are aware of those policies and they understand them. And, you know, one thing that's always struck me when it comes to harassment is it's the impact it has on the person and not the intent. And that's something that really needs to be reinforced within the workplace. For all involved. And, you know, we have Christmas party season around now.
Oh no. They'll be banning mistletoe. So Gemma, I'm obviously on the flip side, this is very good news for you and your business, isn't it?
Look, to be honest, we're supporting clients quite a long time. You know, I'm working within the group 15 years now, and we're consistently busy. We speak to clients.
I bet you are.
day in, day out. And, there's a lot of changes coming from a legislative perspective, but I suppose we've been trying to prep clients and business owners for those along the way and continue to support them. But alongside all of the changes, you still have the day-to-day issues that have been cropping up all the time, your conduct, your managing your absence, irrespective of the changes or the payments that need to be made. You still have to deal with the operational impact of people ringing in sick on the business and, if it's impact in service delivery, for example. So you have your normal day-to-day issues plus the added pressure of all of these changes. And, more and more employees are aware of their rights and entitlements these days. So employers have to be careful.
It's a bit of a load for employers to take 100%. On this, of course, Gemma. The other thing about this is the very, very clear drafting of these laws mean that HR is now the law, and that lawyers, when it comes to employment law, are made redundant in a very, very large way, because everything goes to HR rather than anything beyond legal. That's true, isn't it? That employment law in itself, big lawyers, I'm going to the lawyer to sue you for whatever it is. It doesn't. It just goes straight to the HR department, doesn't it?
Yeah, when it comes to HR, it's human resources. You're dealing with people that when people have a complaint, yes, there's a legislation in place and it's there for a reason, and policies are generally drafted in line with that legislation. But there's also a human aspect as well. So, we've spoken about harassment. If you're having a policy in relation to harassment in the workplace, that should always have an informal and a formal approach to it. Wherever possible, informal is generally best, because it's more likely that working relations will be maintained going forward if those involved can come to an amicable resolution. So I think from a HR perspective, keeping your policies and legal talk out of it, and in layman's term, easy for everyone to understand, and remembering that it's people you're dealing with at the end of the day is really important. And I think that's where HR plays a key role.
Unemployment's gone up over the last 3 months. Do you expect it to continue in an upward direction over the next 12 months? And Keir Starmer calling it a victory for working people will actually be proved wrong?
I think that the new changes coming in and the increased costs, I think employers may be quite apprehensive about their hiring plans and really need to sit down and look at what those costs will involve. So I do think it's going to be a watch this space over the next couple of months, because there's a lot to weigh up, and it's the anticipation, the unknown almost. Yeah. So I think as we get more into 2026, we should have a better indication of how things will look at that point.
I'll tell you what the instant impact will be for those owner managers who are in the business themselves, that if they don't work hard enough, if 60 hours isn't enough for them, they might end up working 75, because they'd rather take on a job and a half of someone else that they used to hire instead of taking the risk and the extra payments involved in that, won't it? I mean, we are going to have a bit of stress related to those owner managers that work in the business.
Potentially, I do think so, but I think that's why, going back to the point of being informed now. So whilst we will have Royal Assent tomorrow, these changes aren't all coming in at once, so we have time.
What's the time span of the things that we need to know, Gemma?
Yes, so I suppose from within the private sector, so aside from one change that will predominantly impact public, April is going to be, I suppose, where the increased costs come in, because that's where we have our changes to statutory sick pay. So all workers are going to be entitled to that from day one of their absence, essentially. There's no qualifying service for a statutory paternity leave, which obviously is another cost involved. Then when it comes to October, that's when we're going to have the extension of the time limits to take an employment tribunal claim. So we're looking at that being extended from 3 months to 6 months. And then coming into the sexual harassment will also take place in October. Then January next year, I think, is going to be the real big one. That's where we have the qualifying service from an unfair dismissal perspective changing to the 6 months. And then the further changes are coming in then, as you mentioned, zero hours, low hours contracts, and the introduction of unpaid bereavement leave, and the remainder of the reforms. It's a
Gemma,
lot.
yeah, it's a lot to take on, and obviously people will think very carefully and maybe even twice about employing people, and I wonder if that is an unintended consequence of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's idea about this workers' rights bill. Gemma O'Connor from BrightHR, thank you very much indeed for joining us. She's the head of HR advisory there.